And welcome back to the Weirdest Team Ever podcast, where we wear sunglasses after wins and we cover the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, game just ended probably like 10, 15 minutes ago. Timberwolves 123, Utah Jazz 95. Really fun game, really good win. I've got some notes written down for this one. I think we can just kind of get right into this one. In a lot of ways, it was a story of two halves. I think the first half was it wasn't bad, but um, definitely I think there was a lot to improve on after that first half, and we should give the Wolves some credit. They did. Um, I also think part of that was the Jazz is kind of getting cold and not being able to just get to a lot of their same stuff. And a lot of missed threes and whatnot. But hey, I think the Wolves countered really well. Especially, oh my God, excuse me, especially on the defensive side. Um, I think we can just get right into that and start with defense because that's been the theme of the season so far is the defense. Through 5 games, the Timberwolves have had the number one defense in the NBA. Now, I thought the Wolves defense was going to be good this year, but I didn't think that at any point we'd have the number one defense in the NBA. And honestly, like by watching these games, the eye test matches that because this team is fucking elite on defense. Out of our 5 games we've played, 4 of them, the Wolves have held their opponent to under 100 points. Um, that almost never happens in the modern NBA. NBA offenses have just gotten so good that scoring over 100 has kind of become a guarantee almost in a lot of ways for many teams, at least in the regular season, because the playoffs are a bit different. But on the broadcast, they said Michael Grady said last season in 82 games, the Wolves held their opponent to under 100 points 4 times total. And now this season, 5 games in, we've already matched that, done it 4 times. Only exception was that Atlanta Hawks game that just kind of went off the rails in a lot of different ways. But damn, this team that tonight, that second half defense was exceptional. The first half, I thought it was still decent too. I mean, it wasn't. I don't think it was bad. I just thought there were some inconsistencies in that first half that they shored up in the second half. Biggest thing defensively from that first half was really just like leaving the Utah shooters open. It felt like a lot of the Timberwolves rotations were just late and off, and they just didn't happen. We saw Lauri Markkanen just get a ton of easy shot attempts, which I thought was weird considering how Lauri's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA, and the Wolves kind of left him open. And even when they were covering him, I didn't love the matchups a lot of the time. Part of that was McDaniels being in foul trouble, which we'll talk about for a good bit at the end of the episode because I think that needs to be talked about. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Lauri's is not like a matchup I really like at all. And we saw Lauri kind of take advantage of that sometimes, and just the missed rotations. Like defenders need to stay on home on those rotations and stay on the shooters, especially Talen Horton-Tucker. I'm fine with him getting open looks, even though he converted on some of them tonight. We saw he kind of fell back down to earth after a little bit, after some makes, but that's really my only defensive gripe from the first half. Was just that. But the second half, yeah, they turned up for sure. We saw some great things defensively. Cat defensively has been so good this season. The 3-point shooting has been off. We know that. Tonight had a bit of a bounce back. Maybe the percentages weren't like great by any means, but I thought when he found his confidence with his shot, you could really see it. And I think he made back-to-back threes for the first time this season, which is a big win because Cat's shooting being back is really what's going to help us with a lot of these games. I think part of the reason the offense has been kind of weird is because Cat hasn't really been able to establish his spacing early on in games. Not like that's the only way Cat can score, because tonight, obviously, we saw that he was taking John Collins to the block and just giving him the work over and over again. And part of Cat's offensive diet has to be in the paint and going to the post against whatever like wing they want to put up, what they want to put on him. Historically, Cat hasn't posted up against wings that well, but I still think he can 1-on-1. And if he finds confidence with that, I think it's a big win for his game and a big win for the whole team overall. And tonight we saw that against John Collins. One of the things I have written down in my notes is that Cat was able to establish his post play on Collins right away in the game. In the very first few minutes of the first quarter, we saw that Cat was pretty eager to go at Collins and just take him all the way to the rim, which I just think is huge. Something that I think is meaningful for Karl is when they try to get him easy looks early in the game, because you see it in real time. Like because teams come in game planning for Anthony Edwards mostly at this point. But if you can get Cat some easy looks and get him some buckets early on, it completely changes the way that defenses will start to play the Wolves, because they're like, okay, we have to start worrying about Cat a bit more, and that gives Ant some space, and that gives McDaniel some space, that gives Conley and Gobert their space to run their 2-man, all of that, right? So, yeah, I just think the first thing I like other than the defense, I just think we got to give some credit to Karl in this one. Was just how good he was and how composed he was, and he had some fouls that were kind of dumb, yeah, but I thought he did a lot better job at kind of containing himself and just not letting the fouls kind of overwhelm him at all. A lot of times with Cat, we see that when he picks up some fouls in a game, he lets those fouls dictate his play, which is really what you can't do in basketball, right? If you are playing like you have fouls, you might as well just be better off not playing at all. Um, if you're in foul trouble, or if you've got some fouls and they're and you're getting worked up about it, you just got to play like you don't have them. Um, Within reason, obviously, but you got to play. You just got to play your game. And I thought he did a good job of that tonight. And he didn't. I felt like he never backed down from anything. Cat shot 7 for 14 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, 9 for 10 from the free throw line. That was also a big part of this game for Cat, was he got to the line a lot, being able to take Collins to the rack, and having guys like Kessler and Olynyk and Markkanen on the Jazz kind of close out on Cat, is that Cat got to the line a lot. And Cat, I remember in the 2022 season, part of what made Cat so good that season was not only the 3-point shooting, but his pump and go, get to the basket game. And what came with that was Cat getting a ton of free throw attempts each game. And that was just instant offense and instant points for the team. And it was really big that we saw him get back to that tonight. And Cat's defense was so good tonight too. I thought he played a really good defensive game on Collins. I think he got moved on to like Olynyk and Lowry like a tiny bit, and I thought he did a fine job there. Really impressed with Cat tonight. But yeah, the first like kind of what I was saying, the first half was it left some to be desired, and the Wolves corrected without a doubt. The second half started, and when Cat's going on that tear of scoring, and the defense shores up in the way it does, it's like this team is really hard to stop. Cat was playing so good in that third quarter that Finch didn't even need to put Ant back in the game until like the fourth started. And when you can do that, and you're still like extending your lead, that's big. That's really big. Anthony Edwards, by the way, also had a really freaking good game. I can read his stat line. In 35 minutes, Anthony Edwards had 31 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, was a team high plus 27 in this game. 13 for 19 from the field. That's huge. 2 for 4 from 3. And it honestly could have been 4 for 6 if the 2 illegal screens on Towns and Gobert respectively weren't called. I thought, I mean, Ant could have had more than that, and his percentages could have been even better. 6 turnovers for Anthony Edwards, but I feel like the turnovers didn't really end up costing the team. I felt like those turnovers were just kind of like random, like, random weird possessions or late, like in the fourth quarter, late third quarter, where things just kind of fell apart and someone had to take the turnover there. Hold on. What's my mic? There we go. Now we're good. Right? Now we're good. Yeah. Yeah, but like despite the turnovers, I thought Ant had a really good game. 0 fouls for Ant, 73% true shooting percentage. I thought Ant had a great game. Ant's passing has been really good this season. It really has. It seems like he's doing such a better job at making the right play in consecutive possessions, and he's doing a better job at being able to find Gobert. He had some beautiful passes to Gobert tonight. Giving Towns the ball when he's on a heater, giving Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid the ball when they're in positions to score, knowing when to defer to Mike Conley with the ball handling duties. Ant did a really good job of that tonight, as well as the scoring. I mean, Ant's skills as a scorer have never felt more controlled and at Ant's own pace than they have so far this season. For as good as Ant was last year in his third year, you can tell that FIBA experience and whatever he was doing over the summer really has improved his scoring because the way he's stepping into those threes are different. Like the mid ranges, he took a lot of them tonight, but he also made a lot of them tonight. The pace at which he's been able to attack the basket, get to the line a little bit more. Didn't get to the line a ton tonight, and didn't convert on a lot of his shots at the line tonight. But still a work in progress for Ant, and you can see the improvement on the court every game. Really big Anthony Edwards game tonight for sure. Other big performances. I thought Kyle Anderson had that one stretch in like the late second, parts of the third quarters where he was like making tough like step back jumpers, and I think he had that one at the end of the third, where he's like he's on the baseline and he's like leaning back. He beat the buzzer for that shot. I'm pretty sure that counted too. Like Kyle Anderson was just really good, and he was still getting to the lane and getting those floaters up. 6 assists for him tonight, 1 steal, 2 blocks. Also had a really good defensive game. I thought he covered Markkanen pretty good at some points. 3 rebounds, a plus 11, 5 for 6 from the field, 87% true shooting. Really good Kyle Anderson game. He's just such an important part of this team. And having him come in off the bench when McDaniels is in foul trouble, or when you want to run like a lineup with him and Naz, you can do that too, and you can run slow-mo at point guard like we've seen that other games. We didn't really see it as much today, but we've seen him run point guard this season so far already. Slow-mo had a really big game. Naz Reid. I thought Naz Reid was really good again tonight. 16 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 5 for 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, 1 turnover, no fouls. Really good Naz Reid game. You can just like hear it through the screen. You can hear the crowd react to Naz Reid doing anything, and that is just a great. It's great the way that this fan base has embraced him, and we know that, but like Naz Reid coming into the game for 22 minutes and just being able to score and get buckets and make plays in transition. He had that one like really sick play where he I think the Jazz made a turnover in transition, and the Wolves got it right back, and Naz did that. He got to his Euro step lay in tight bag, and yeah, the crowd just popped when he did that. Really good Naz Reid game again. Mike Conley and Gobert with their own really good contributions. Gobert, impressive again defensively, 11 points, 10 rebounds, 1 assist, 4 blocks, 5 for 10 from the field. He pretty much nullified Walker Kessler's impact entirely, which is all we ever heard last year was people saying that Walker Kessler is already better than Gobert, and Gobert has gotten worse than Walker Kessler. It's that's not really true. It wasn't true last year. In this game, just kind of proves that again. Gobert he's still much better. And this defense so far this year, it's been number 1 in the NBA, and I keep on raving about it, and it's none of it happens without Gobert. Yes, Cat has had a good defensive year, and McDaniels is McDaniels, and Slow-Mo and Naz and Ant, I feel have been okay defenders at time, and sometimes really good. But ultimately, this Gobert is the one who's anchoring this defense, and you got to give him a lot of credit with how he's playing this year, and how he's been able to, how he's been able to carry this Wolves defense up, because he's just been teams, they just aren't getting a lot of rim attempts against the Wolves when Gobert is in the game, and when they do get rim attempts, they just don't go in because Gobert has just been all over the place. He had that one block at the perimeter against, I don't remember who, but he's been more comfortable to leave his position down low and to guard the perimeter a bit more too, and is kind of, you can feel he's really back to that Utah Rudy, where yes, he's anchoring the paint, but he's also doing a lot more than that, and he's venturing out, and he's contesting shots in the perimeter, doing all the things that made him so versatile and elite in Utah. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, another rough night for him. I thought he had some really good defensive moments. 2 steals and 3 blocks are really good numbers for a guard, and on when he was on the court, you could see the defense too. The scoring has just been really, really not good for him, and if he wants to get more minutes and he wants to carve out more of a role for this team, I think him hitting shots is going to be big. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think he's only hit 2 3-pointers the entire season, and he's taken a lot more than that, which is rough for sure. Because I was in the summer, I was kind of going hard for Nickeil's shooting, saying oh, he can really shoot, because it looked like the form was different in the summer and the workout videos, and in FIBA for Team Canada, he was just draining threes when he was taking them, but hasn't translated so far to the NBA, or not to the NBA, but to this season, which is also a bit predictable, just because last year he started out really hot from 3, and then he went ice cold, and then he got hot again in the playoffs. So the 3-pointer with Nickeil is it's going to be an up and down thing, and to start the season, it's been down. Thankfully, we're not in the same position that we were in the playoffs last year, where it's we desperately need Nickeil to make those. It's not the biggest deal right now, but I mean, he's got to find his shot eventually, and I think, law of averages, I think it'll bounce back. It always kind of has so far in his Wolves tenure, where he's gone through ups and he's gone through downs with the 3-point shooting. Mike Conley, good game. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't even matter that he had 7 points and 6 assists. I thought he had a really good game, and you can just feel it. Shake Milton had more of an impact tonight than he's ever had, in my opinion, with this team. 8 points, 2 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block. do that more consistently, please. That would be awesome. I thought he showed some good things. And then at the end of the game, you have got Minot and Dacian Nix and Troy Brown and McLaughlin getting like 3 minutes each. They all played good too. No, I don't think any of the missed shots. Dacian Nix had that dunk, and Minot is just all over the place like he always is. So yeah, just going through the box score, like really, I think solid performance from everyone. I don't think anybody stood out as bad except for Jaden McDaniels, who I think we can kind of talk about him for a little bit. I am starting to get maybe a bit concerned with McDaniels and his inability to stay on the court. And his inability to stay on the court is stemming from the fact that he is just a constant fouler on defense. Don't get me wrong, McDaniels, in my opinion, is one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. You can make an argument he's number one. He's outstanding on the perimeter defensively. But you can't he doesn't maximize that defensive prowess because he also just can't stop fouling. He fouls like constantly. I can't really put it in much more of an elegant way. Is that he's handsy on defense. That's part of what makes him so good and such a pest, and part of what allows him to just shut down perimeter superstars every single night. But you know, it comes with a cost, and he uses his hands a lot. And in the NBA, if you use your hands a lot on defense, you're going to get called for fouls, and especially if you're going against players who know that you're foul prone and they know how to bait for fouls, like you're going to get played off the court. Simple as that. And the lack of playing time has also been hurting his offensive production. He was kind of a zero on offense today. I can pull up the box score, but you could just see it. He never really got into a groove. He had 5 points, shot 2 for 4. Yeah, I mean, if you're only getting 4 shots up and you're only playing 20 minutes and you foul out, it's like he's not finding playing time. And the same thing happening against Denver. Another like on whatever day it was, Wednesday. Yeah, Denver on Wednesday, where McDaniels has fouled a lot, and he couldn't really stay on the court. And the only other game McDaniels has played this season was against Atlanta, and he looked really good because he wasn't in foul trouble. The increased playing time for McDaniels allowed him to show the offense really early in that game. It just continued to give him shots on offense, which obviously that's what he wants, and that's what's good for the team because he's a good offensive player. The Atlanta game didn't result in a win, obviously, but like McDaniels being available is key for this team, and when the fouling is this bad, it's just hard. It's hard to rely on Jaden being there when the team needs him. And thankfully, they didn't need him at any point tonight. But you know, God forbid there's an injury to one of the more featured players in the offense, or God forbid, just the team is in a position where they need McDaniels a lot to step up and make shots and defend. And if he's not there because he got into foul trouble early in the first quarter, it's like that's a big loss. And that would just hurt the team a lot. So I don't know. I don't really know what kind of long-term conversation or long-term effect this foul problem has on McDaniels, but all that I do know is that in the present, it's hard to watch, and it's just kind of irritating. Frankly, it's irritating that he is just unreliable and we can't rely on McDaniels to play over like 20, 25 minutes a night because he can't stay out of foul trouble. So again, we didn't thankfully we didn't need him tonight, but I just worry that when we do need him, he's not going to be available because of the fouls. So that's probably my biggest gripe from the game is just McDaniels and him not being available. I could nitpick more about like the first half defense, but I already kind of touched on that earlier about how that was like a bit of a negative, was just like the lack of like awareness and ability to stay home on shooters. But yeah, overall, good game. I'm a bit all over the place with this episode, or this game recap. I definitely could do a better job at just like keeping things organized and just and you know carving out more of a coherent like start to finish with these recaps. But I just kind of tend to go all over the place, so I just kind of I don't know, I jump around a lot. So yeah, really good game. We could talk about the Jazz side of it for a little bit. Markkanen had that little burst in the first and second quarter. I think it was mainly the second where shooters just left him open and he started making them and it got a bit dicey for the Wolves. Like I think the Jazz led for only a tiny bit, but still, this is the kind of team that you want to beat the brakes off of. And they eventually did, but it wasn't that pretty in the first half. I think they made a lot of mistakes. Markkanen only finished the game shooting 7 for 20, but could have been a lot worse than that. And I'm just glad that they were able to adjust when they did. Or it could have looked like a game against Utah last year where it is really close and it goes into overtime and the Wolves just keep on shooting themselves in the foot. Other Utah players, Talen Horton-Tucker, that dude, he was getting his shots up for sure. I kind of mentioned earlier how he made a couple lucky ones, it felt like. But you don't really have to worry about him doing much else the rest of the game. He shot 6 for 20 tonight. That's really bad. 35% true shooting, 2 turnovers, a foul, 14 points, 5 assists. I thought he had a fine defensive game. Taylor Horton-Tucker he's got like a big body. He's a big guard. He's really like a forward, honestly. But he plays point guard for this team, which means he's got extra muscle on Conley, and he's just a big player. So defensively he's got upside there, and I think he showed a bit of that tonight. Ultimately didn't really play much of an effect on the result of the game, but yeah, Talen Horton-Tucker just he missed a lot of shots tonight. Just not really a shooter, and ideally if you're Utah, you don't want to have to give THT 20 shots, but that's kind of the reality they're living with their kind of weaker guard play. So yeah, THT bad shooting night. Jordan Clarkson also kind of a rough shooting night. Shot 5 for 14, 0 for 5 from 3. Clarkson's one of those microwave players where he can just get hot and he can just start scoring in bunches, and being able to limit that tonight was big. 10 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists for Clarkson. And obviously with Clarkson, like the defense is just always going to be pretty shit with him. Just thin frame, never had the defensive discipline or really IQ to make an impact out there. John Collins, I thought had a fine game. Obviously defensively, he was just kind of letting Cat cook him the entire night. I feel like, so kind of a cone out there. But on offense, I thought he's been worse, certainly. I like this fit in Utah for Collins. In Atlanta, really by the end there, it just felt like their relationship was bad between him and the front office and maybe Trae Young too. Um, and it just he there weren't really touches for him anymore over there, especially when you bring in DeJounte Murray and DeAndre Hunter starts to ascend and Sadiq Bey and Okongwu and all these guys to start to kind of slowly eat into Collins's um, usage and minutes. And then, like I said, the potential bad relationship and the fact that the Hawks were like trying to trade Collins for like 3 seasons. It was like, yeah, new change of scenery for Collins, I think, is a good thing. And I don't really know how I haven't really kept up with his season individually so far. But Collins can still score and can still shoot sometimes. And um, yeah, I'm excited to see what this role looks like for Utah moving forward. I just know that defensively, really rough night for Collins. Um, and that's been a big inconsistency with his game too. In Atlanta, especially, like he'd have moments where he was like, "Okay, John Collins' defense is here," and then he'd have moments where it was like, "Okay, what are you doing? You aren't even trying out there." So that was the John Collins game, and then you kind of had a lot of more like minor contributions from guys who didn't get a ton of minutes or a ton of shots for some reason. Ochai Abaji continues to be a great shooter, a guy who I think should get more minutes for this team. Um, Walker Kessler, kind of like I said earlier, kind of a slow start to the season for him. Hasn't been the defensive like menace that he was last year. 3 blocks for him, which is good, but only 4 points, 4 rebounds. That's rough from your center to only get 4 rebounds. Um, yeah, just didn't play that great of a game. Keontae George, their rookie, I thought scored. He had some good buckets, 4 assists for him too. Played 27 minutes though, and I just felt like his usage was low. Also, bad defensive game. Colin Sexton, I I'm like I don't know. It's hard to remain in on Colin Sexton at this point. 7 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. He shot 1 for 3. Um, a ton of turnovers as always. Just not a great game from him. Um, Simone Fontecchio, that's his name, right? Um, small contribution. Kelly Olynyk, dude played 17 minutes and didn't do a thing. He didn't score once. Didn't defend well either. What he was just out there doing cardio. Omar Yurtseven, I guess, is on the Jazz now. I don't remember him leaving Miami, but he's on that team. And then Samanic also 3 points, didn't play a ton. So that's kind of the Jazz box score from this game. Um, obviously, Markkanen is their best player, and he only had 22 points tonight, and on like bad efficiency. So again, it's another testament to the Wolves' great defense so far. As a team, the Jazz shot 27% on threes, 38% from the field. That's just not a recipe to win. Poor shooting nights from some of their guys, yeah, maybe, but also Wolves' defense is just really good. So yeah, I think that was a bit all over the place and a bit sporadic, but we can kind of wrap up the Jazz recap part of this podcast show, and we can kind of preview the Celtics matchup a little bit. So on Monday at the Target Center, the Timberwolves will be playing the Boston Celtics. I will be at this game. So I don't, depending on how tired I am or just how I'm feeling afterward, I maybe not. I might not have the recap up the morning after the game. It might be I might end up having it up on like Wednesday morning instead of Tuesday morning. So just kind of depends on how I'm feeling when I get back. And maybe I'll incorporate some like footage from the game, or maybe I'll record. I don't know. Kind of like I said I would at the Heat game. But then I didn't do it because it's like you got to think about it though. Like I guess I don't have to like you know record anything from the game, but like I don't know. I kind of think it might be kind of cool, and then I actually think about it like when I get there, and it's like, do I really want to like have my phone out recording, talking to myself. Like that's kind of embarrassing. Or not embarrassing, but just like kind of weird. I don't know. So definitely kind of like hard to do that, I guess. But we'll see. I'll be there with my brother. We'll be at the game. Hopefully I see, I don't know. I don't like obviously my listening base on here is very small. But I don't know if you happen to be listening to this and you're gonna get the game and you see me, you can just be like, hey, I listened to the Weirdest Team Ever podcast, and I'll be like, oh, thanks, listener. That's nice of you. Thanks for supporting the show or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's up to you. You can do that if you ever see me around. At the Heat game, I think I said this after that Nuggets or Hawks recap, but I did see some people who I know from Twitter at the game. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, I'll be at the game. Don't know when I'll have that recap out exactly, but let's get into more of the matchup. Um, so the Celtics are probably the best team in the NBA right now. They're 5-0. They're the only undefeated team left remaining. They just beat the Brooklyn Nets tonight. I will say that a lot of Boston's wins so far haven't come against that great of teams. They pulled off that pretty good New York win on the season opener, but since then it's been like the Brooklyn Nets, who are a fine team but not a great team. Um, the Pacers without Halliburton, bad team. The Wizards, an awful team. So, I don't think they've played a team as good as the Wolves in some games now. I think you could argue who's better than the Knicks or the Wolves. I'd probably take the Wolves. But I think this will be a much better challenge for the Celtics than any of those other teams, really. So I think there's room for the Wolves to give them some trouble. But I think with the Celtics, it's going to be hard to score against that team just because their defense has been so good. I've been talking about how the Timberwolves have the number one defense in the NBA, but the Celtics have the number two defense, and they've just got a really solid starting five defensively. Drew Holiday is one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Derek White, one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Jaylen Brown, solid defender for his position. Jason Tatum, great defender for his position. Kristaps Porzingis, great defenders for his position. So they've got a 5-man starting unit of all defenders, and Al Horford as their sixth man, who even in his old age can still defend it and can still block shots and do all that too. So it's going to be hard to score against that team, and we're going to need like a big. We're going to need like an all hands on deck. Everybody has to contribute to win that game, which means like Ant got to chill in the mid range. Cat needs to make his threes and just stay composed. That means Conley and Gobert, their 2-man has to be like as good as it always is. And you got to hope McDaniels and Nikhil can make their shots, and Kyle Anderson and Naz Reid can continue to do their thing, and Shake Milton isn't like completely turnover prone and all that. So it's gonna require a very focused offensive game from the Timberwolves. Defensively for the Wolves, I think that's what we can really hang our hats on. Is that just like if the Wolves can limit the Celtics offense, that starts out as a good foundation for setting up a good offense against them. The Celtics are obviously an elite defensive team, but also they're elite offensively too. They're undefeated for a reason. Jason Tatum is one of the best all-around offensive players in the game today. Drew Holiday, very good offensive player. Jaylen Brown, very good offensive player. Kristaps Porzingis so far this season, really good offensive player. Like that starting five is just really terrifying on both sides of the floor. So it's gonna be a tough game to win. We will be at home, which will help. Both teams will have the same amount of days of rest. I don't. I'm not. I'm unaware of any potential injuries on the Celtics side or anything that could be going on as far as like potential rest or any of that. I assume that there won't be any resting from the Celtics side just because they'll have a game in between their game tonight against against the Brooklyn Nets and the game against the Timberwolves on Monday. So I expect fully healthy teams for both rosters. And it'll be a tough, gritty win if the Wolves want to get that out. So yeah, I imagine you, I imagine you throw Conley on Derek White because I think their frames match up well. I assume that you put Ant on Drew Holiday and you just hope for the best there. I don't really know where you put Cat then because I think you want to put McDaniels on Tatum because it seems like a really good matchup, but also like I just feel like Jaylen Brown could eat Cat alive out there if that's the primary matchup for the full game. And then Gobert just goes on Porzingis, and then the backups, it kind of changes things too. I don't hate the Naz Reid on Tatum matchup. Like I don't think it's horrible. I also don't hate the Kyle Anderson matchup on either Brown or Tatum. So Wolves do have size and length that they can throw on those two dynamic wings. It's just going to be a hard win. Hard game. Honestly, I think if there's something that you could hope for is that you just hope Jason Tatum has one of those infamous horrible shooting nights where he just decides to shoot like, you know, 5 for 19 or 5 for 21 or something like that. Like he just has one of those nights, which he's kind of prone to having, and then maybe Jaylen Brown just doesn't take over, or Drew or Porzingis are just all right. Then there's maybe a bit more of an opportunity you can win, but it's going to be tough. It's just going to be tough, and the Celtics' depth is not great, but Pritchard can still get buckets, and O'Shea Brissett and all those guys, they're still NBA players. I mean, they can still score and they can do things too. So um, it's going to be a tough game against Boston. Obviously, if we won, I'd be ecstatic. If we could come away um, from that Boston Celtics game being 4-2, that would be huge. Obviously, 3-3 feels a bit worse, but you know, it's kind of what happens when you drop games to the Hawks and the Raptors. When you have it like in the palm of your hands, it's like then the losses against the Celtics hurt even more. So um we'll see. It's going to be a tough game. Like I said, I can't reiterate that enough. They're the last undefeated team in the NBA, and that could certainly continue on Monday night against the Wolves. So okay, that was a bit all over the place the entire last 40 minutes, but I think we're ready to wrap this thing up. Thank you for watching on YouTube and on Spotify. Um, wherever you are watching this, like the video or rate the pod 5 stars and subscribe and share with whoever you might know. Comment on things that you think I could improve on or change that you would like better. Or maybe if you just like it and you just want to say, "Hey, good show, Ryan," that would also be cool with me, and I'd greatly appreciate that support as well. Um, Go in the description. Go to my other podcast, Soul Hoops. We just came out with an episode today where we talked about like a ton of teams, like the Clippers, Lakers, Spurs, Blazers, Suns, Bucks. Like we talked about a ton of different teams. We broke down the James Harden trade that happened last week. So go check that out. Go check out my writing on the Drop Step Online and Canis Hoopus, and follow me on Twitter for my awesome, hilarious tweets that are really funny and really cool. And really, I'm like really smart too, because I like tweet about the games as they happen. So like my live tweets, and I'm like really smart. So do all that too. And without anything else needing to be said, have a good evening or good morning or good whatever, everyone, and peace.